Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
Well, you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
It's like a Sharknado, except with poop.
Dumps.
Out in the nation. Waldorf Nation, everybody, welcome to the show. Friday. About time, TGIF. We got an amazing show for y'all today. Let's just say that. We're going to talk about, of course, some fun stuff. As usual, insane Republicans still trying to prove the election. Yes, even today, still trying to prove the election was stolen. Insane. We got a MAGA writer also revealed to be not so honest with their taxes. We got Brett Favre related to an investigation into welfare fraud. Wow, that's an amazing story, and I say an amazing story because the details
amazing.
I don't remember reporting on that. Because the original investigation actually happened last year, but there's still fallout from it. And so Brett Favre, literally getting in a Twitter fight now with the auditor of Mississippi. Wow. So that's a really interesting story. The details on that, even if you heard the story before, or even if you remember, because last year was a cavalcade of nonstop bullshit in news. You remember the beginning of the Mississippi fraud story? Yeah, more details on that, newer details on that, including a little bit of a fight from, I should say, between Favre and that auditor. That's fantastic. That's really just an amazing story. And then we have fossil fuel companies being put on the spot by one Katie Porter. So that's fun stuff. All right. Wealthy people are insanely cheap. I'm not surprised. Yeah. Who would have known? All right. So we have the details on all that stuff. Before we do, please like and share the stream. Is my shirt blending into the background lighting? Okay, why don't I change that then? And I don't mean my shirt. It'd be a little weird. All right. Better? All right. There we go. Could be a little bit better here, hopefully. I didn't even notice. All right. So let's see. Better. Okay, good. Good, thank you. No, no, not nice. Bad, very bad, sad. I see you. I see you. All right. That said, let's do it. Let's jump into the first story. More election fraud nonsense. Go again. MAGA chuds are still desperately trying to find evidence of widespread election fraud from 2020. No, it is nearly 22 now. And look, there have been voter fraud cases for sure. I've talked about those on the show. Interestingly enough, all of them seem to have been done by Trump supporters. So I guess you could say they know a lot about fraud. They know many things about fraud. And they're very, very knowledgeable. Everybody asks them about fraud because they're always doing the fraud. Okay, well, yet of course, since there seem to be experts on voter fraud because they're doing the voter fraud, they can't seem to find evidence to back up that it's widespread voter fraud on behalf of the Democrats. That seems to have been happening. I mean, at least until what now? Oh, well, apparently one MAGA Wisconsin sheriff says, no, we've got the evidence. We got the evidence. Oh, okay. Well, I'm very, very interested in this. In fact, he's so confident that he held a news conference on Thursday to unveil what he billed as proof of statewide election fraud. Oh, great. Here we go. He said this. This is, let's see, Republican Racine County Sheriff Christopher Schmalling. Here's what he said. Election statute was in fact not just broken, but shattered by members of the Wisconsin Election Commission. Okay, so, well, that's compelling. Very compelling. So he is accusing the entire Wisconsin Elections Commission of shattering election statute and giving the state barely to Joe Biden. By the way, let me just note, too, that in Racine County, Trump actually did win the vote, 51-47, but barely lost the state. It was a real squeaker. So now, as a result, Schmalling said, I did a very in-depth, extensive investigation into widespread voter fraud. So now, he apparently last year got a tip. He got a tip, just a tip. And he said, I'm going to look into it. Okay, all right. That was about a year ago. So he looked into it. And the result? Nothing. No criminal charges. They're not locking anybody up. Nothing. So let me give you the details on this. Now, sheriff's investigators said one resident of Ridgewood Care Facility in Mount Pleasant likely voted illegally in the November 2020 election against a court order declaring the resident incompetent to vote. Schmalling's office also alleged that 7 additional residents of the same nursing home voted despite evidence of cognitive decline. Oh no! Cognitive decline. Okay, so how is this evidence of voter fraud or even widespread voter fraud? I mean, that is the question here. I mean, again, this is not even illegal unless there were court orders that were finding those other people incompetent. So now apparently there might have been one person that they deemed incompetent and therefore their vote didn't count. Oh my God, widespread voter fraud, here it is. Wait, no. See, here's the thing. I know the mindset already. When I was reading this, I was thinking, well, of course they would think somebody who may or may not have voted for Biden, which I guess they assume, but we don't know for sure. They assume, well, you must be mentally incompetent. Okay, well, again, we don't even know who they voted for, so that's real weird. So now, Schmalling went on to claim, no, see what happened in the nursing home That one time in that one nursing home in that one town, that is proof, evidence that there is a statewide problem. This is happening everywhere. All the nursing homes. Wow. That's your evidence. That's your evidence. Pathetic. Pathetic. So now, Wisconsin Elections Commission Chairwoman Ann Jacobs said the sheriff's allegations are untrue and accused him of stirring up baseless questions after election officials worked hard to make sure nursing home residents could vote during the pandemic. You see, nursing homes full of elderly people who are more susceptible, of course, to coronavirus. And during the election, coronavirus, as it still is a problem. It is a problem. And so, yes, you want to make sure to set up ways that these people can vote safely without risk of contracting coronavirus, which is much more deadly towards people who are elderly. That seems like common sense. But for them, no, not common sense. Wonderful. So bad. Now, so here's what Jacobs said. The law is very clear that just because a child or a relative feels that someone is not allowed to vote, they still have a right to vote. We've got to be careful about trampling on people's civil liberties, and the right to vote is one of our most cherished civil liberties. Again, I can see it right now. Hey, I think Grandpa and Grandma is a little slow. They shouldn't be allowed to vote because they might not vote for Trump. I could see that. I could definitely see that. So that said, Schmaling puts out some, pretty serious allegations and says, I got proof of voter fraud, even though it's not really proof of widespread voter fraud. Now, are we at all surprised? No, of course not. We shouldn't be. Because this guy is a total clown. But what Schmaling is doing now is interesting. So now he is asking Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul, a Democrat, to launch his own investigation into widespread voter fraud after his investigation turned up nothing that is actionable, no criminal charges or anything. Well, now why would you do that? Now Kaul responded by saying, look, the Department of Justice would be available to assist with any case involving credible evidence of voter fraud. But then noted that no charges were filed as a result of Schmaling's investigation, meaning, of course, okay, if you bring me credible evidence, we'll look at it. But more than happy to. And you know what? That's the right thing to do. If there is actual credible evidence of voter fraud, yes, we should absolutely look into it. I'd like to know. I want to see it. I want to see it. I want to stop it. That said, they had nothing. He had nothing. And so now the Journal Sentinel reported the situation quickly descended into a political fight with Wisconsin election commissioners denying they did anything wrong and Republican lawmakers calling for them to just quit their jobs. Just quit. So, we can replace you with people who will play ball. Oh, does everybody see the game? This is the game. That's not an obvious giveaway as to what they actually want you to do or want to happen. For all the people who don't play ball to quit their jobs so they can get replaced by other people who are sympathetic to basically saying, oh, yes, we found or manufactured evidence of voter fraud so that we can, of course, institute measures that will ensure that only Republicans win in the future. Like, we know. So now, when Kaul eventually says, no, I'm not, or, he says, I'm not going to do this investigation. Okay, because we don't have evidence. They're going to turn around, the Republicans, and say, well, see, the Democrats know they did the fraud, and they're not going to investigate. So understand that this is a lose-lose situation in this case, because what you're dealing with is not rational, good faith people. These people are not rational. They're not acting in good faith. They're insane. The Republican Party is insane. You cannot deal with crazy people. 60% of the Republican base says overturn the election. This is not something that is going to go away. These people have been radicalized by the likes of Tucker Carlson, Donald Trump, Newsmax, OAN, the Pillow Guy, and members of Congress. The entire party has gone off a cliff. It is completely unsalvageable at this point. Now, Devin Remiker, the interim director of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, said the Racine County Sheriff's Department has been wasting taxpayer money in an attempt to rehash discredited claims about the 2020 election results. There weren't any charges filed or any even suggested. The press conference didn't shed light on any election fraud, but did reveal the Racine County Sheriff's Department may have broken the law during their own farce of an investigation. Now, what that is, I don't know. I would be curious to see, but here's the thing. On all this nonsense election fraud stuff, I think we need to start getting tough. Because here's the thing. This is not normal. This is not healthy. This is not a good democracy. Okay? The Republican Party, understand, is so incredibly radicalized now that many of them are calling for violence. Charlie Kirk recently, interviewed or talked to somebody at one of his rallies, and like, when do we get the guns? When do we get the guns? Because they are convinced through conspiracy theories that they had the election stolen from them. So they're full of conspiracy theorists and violent insurrectionists, and yet they're somehow still treated by the Democrats, by the way, and this is the most frustrating thing, by the National Democratic Party. They're still treating the Republicans as if they're a legitimate political party. Even with the people with the likes of Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene in the ranks. And they're spouting insane things. I think we need to think about ways that we can actually protect democracy from the crazies that have taken over. And unfortunately, I don't see what's happening here. The J6 rioters are being treated with kids' gloves. I don't see why this continues to happen, why they're not being treated more seriously for what they've done. And as a result of them not being treated seriously, I'm afraid that the right is going to continue to go further and further, get more violent, and they're already violent, and end up doing something incredibly awful, which would be too late to stop. I hope I am wrong, and I hope that, people get back to their senses, but knowing what I know, seeing what I've seen, I don't think it's going to get any better. I think it's going to get way worse before it gets better. Trucker had a guest on where they talked about the left wanting to kill off all Republicans. Ridiculous. Total projection. It really is insane. Like, they are projecting onto us what they want to do. It is ironic. Like, Democrats are trying to kill us. And it's like, no, like the left, I should say the left is trying to kill us. The left is trying to destroy us. They're trying to murder us all. And over here, we're on the left, we're like, God damn it, can we all get some fucking health care? It's insane. Insane. Kid gloves, more like mittens, the mittens of disapproval. Yeah, fair. Yeah, I just want to get everybody some fucking health care, guys. That's all we want. And this is the other side that we're supposed to reach out to. Yeah, I know, it's sad. All right. Let's move on. A Capitol rioter who claims that she is too white for jail may be heading there anyway. Not due to anything that she did during the insurrection, but actually due to back taxes. Huh. Now, Jenna Ryan, the Dallas area realtor who flew to Washington on a private jet before participating in the January 6th insurrection, had filmed herself on the steps of the Capitol declaring that she was, quote unquote, tired of paying taxes to crooks. That's kind of ironic because turns out she actually hasn't been paying her taxes. Oops. Although, I guess, I suppose she is being consistent. Now, in a new court filing, federal prosecutors allege that Ryan has a, quote, history of tax delinquency, according to Politico reporter Kyle Cheney. The defendant has not consistently paid her taxes, with a history of federal and state tax liens from 2013 and 2016 that caused a deficiency of more than $35,000 in back taxes that was not resolved until April 2021. Prosecutors wrote in the sentencing memo for Ryan. Despite her own history of tax delinquency, the defendant recorded herself on the Capitol steps, declaring that she was tired of paying taxes to crooks. Ryan, who pleaded guilty in August to a misdemeanor charge of parading, demonstrating, or picketing, is scheduled to be sentenced on November 4th. However, prosecutors are asking the judge, U.S. District Judge Christopher Cooper, to sentence Ryan to about 60 days in jail. Okay, so not very much. So, but understand that there are Capitol rioters who've pled guilty to the same offense. They only got probation. So she would actually be getting prison time, and it's because of something that she had said. They say that the stiffer sentence is warranted in part because Ryan boasted on Twitter that she was definitely not going to jail. Sorry, I have blonde hair, white skin, a great job, a great future, and I'm not going to jail. Sorry to rain on your hater parade. I did nothing wrong. So that is some super Karen, I'm going to your goddamn manager kind of bullshit we have here. All right. So, and oh no, I'm too pretty and white to go to jail. You can't send me to jail. I'm pretty and I'm white and I have a great job. And why does that matter? So, but understand, this is the message that she's sending, right? Jail isn't for white, beautiful people like myself. No, it's for them. It's for those people. It's the black and brown people. It's for the poors. People like me don't belong in jail. They do. Oh, okay. Yeah. See, look, I keep telling you, entitlement mentality with these people. Not only did they feel entitled to the election that they lost and don't feel like they, should face any repercussions, but they also just went through life with an entire entitlement mentality. I deserve this. I deserve that. Because I'm white and right-wing. And everybody tells me how special I am and wonderful I am, even though they're also telling me at the same time how much of a victim I am. And that's what's going on. Now, prosecutors, in their sentencing memo, wrote this. Perhaps the most compelling need for specific deterrence arises from the defendant's misguided belief that she is above the law, or at least insulated from incarceration. Turns out, hey, you do the crime, you do the time, right? But here's the thing, okay? There's a larger meta point to be made. So in that meta point, it goes to radicalization, all right? So now the Washington Post put out this piece in February talking about the Capitol rioters and how, they faced some financial hardships, which I thought was hilarious. Because of the fact that it's like trying to excuse what they did in a way of like, well, they're middle class people, but they faced some hardships. So now let me read you some of that. They said, despite her outward signs of success, Ryan had struggled financially for years. The Post reported she was still paying off the $37,000 lien for unpaid federal taxes when she was arrested, nearly lost her home to foreclosure before that, filed for bankruptcy in 2012, and faced another IRS tax lien in 2010. And yet, homegirl still flew in a private jet to January 6th. It feels like maybe she could have sold the jet, to pay off her taxes. And then, of course, maybe then she could have also just laid off the avocado toast, stopped, buying lattes, all the stuff that they tell poor people when they don't have money. Now, an interesting stat came up in that report. They found that business owners and white-collar workers made up 40% of the people accused of taking part of the Capitol riot. according to a study by the Chicago Project on Security and Threats at the University of Chicago. Only 9% appeared to be unemployed. So it kind of like destroys the narrative, like, no, these are Americans that are struggling. They're going through such hard times, and that's why they went to the Capitol in order to protest the election, because bad financial hardship. Oh, poor people. No, they weren't poor at all. And by the way, everybody's gone through financial hardship at least at one point in their lives. I should say most people, right? Most people also do not invade the Capitol building for Trump. And so, but what's interesting about radicalization, these people who were doing pretty well were convinced somehow that they were going to lose everything. And they were convinced by right-wing media. See, understand that they're constantly told the left is coming for you. The left, the Democrats are coming for you. They're gonna take you down. Ironically, the people making, $60,000, $70,000 a year, or even lower, like $35,000 a year, they're like, they've been convinced, they've been conditioned to think that when lefties call for increased taxes on the billionaires, the rich, that it's coming after them. That's insane. No, that's not who we want to tax. We do want to tax the ultra millionaires, the super wealthy. But these people think, but then I'm not going to be super wealthy. What happens when I'm super wealthy? Well, if I'm going to be rich, then I'm going to be taxed more. I don't want that. I'm a temporarily embarrassed millionaire. Yeah, insane. So, but nonetheless, they have been told this. They have been fed these lies. Also, the lies, of course, that they are better than other people because they are, middle class, upper middle class, and all that. This is also what happens when you're like, these people are the job creators. They're the job creators, and we should laud the job creators. We should have special deference and reverence to the poor job creator. Let's give everything to the job creator. We must sacrifice a lamb to the job creators. But they're told that they're special. So, but again, here's the thing, right? Now, the rich, the wealthiest Americans, we're living right now in a time of incredible economic inequality, where the wealthiest Americans and corporations have taken everything. All of that money, billions of dollars, have flowed to the top. By the way, the United States is now one of the world's biggest tax havens because our corporate taxes are so low and our enforcement is almost non-existent when it comes to billionaire tax cheats. Okay, so we're basically like the Cayman Islands, which is another tax haven. American billionaires don't even have to go anywhere else. They could just hide it in, a couple of shell corporations in fucking Delaware. And so that's the problem here. Okay? And yet, these people are convinced, no. We're doing bad because it's Democrats. And look, in reality, of course, policies enacted by Republicans mainly, but of course helped through by Democrats, have exacerbated income inequality. So again, the Trump tax cuts are a fantastic example of this. So Trump and the Republicans jammed through gigantic tax cuts that mainly benefited the wealthiest Americans. So now Joe Biden's in office and the Democrats have control of government effectively. Are we getting rid of those Trump tax cuts? Oh no, hell no. They refuse to touch billionaires almost at all. There's a tiny little billionaires surtax in the budget reconciliation package, which has been slimmed down to almost unrecognizable, piece of legislation here that barely helps anyone, really. And so Joe Biden, they couldn't even get rid of some of the corporate taxes. And by the way, Joe Biden's plan was to raise corporate taxes. That's what he said he wanted to do, 28%. It was actually higher before the Trump tax cuts. And the Democrats were like, no, we're not going to raise corporate taxes. We're not even going to restore them to where they were before Donald Trump. And so the rich get richer, that income distribution flows upward and leaves less and less for the rest of the American people. And of course, that means we fight more against each other. And then, of course, you add the radicalization from Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, right-wing conservative media, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have a bunch of people who, are doing well, but think that they're in an incredibly precarious situation economically. And guess who they blame? Black people, poor people, immigrants. That's what's going on here. So it's not hard to see what's going on here. It's not hard to see what's going on. But again, these people are told that they're special because they're white, but you're being beaten down by black people and immigrants and brown people, the weakest group among us. And I say that because they have very little power in our political system. Way less power, political power, and way less net worth as far as, income than white people do. But it doesn't matter because then that also plays on the racism that already exists in suburban white Republican Christian America. And so they also are told that the only way to get their power back that they still have is to fight back even harder against the powerless while the rich pick their pockets. And all of our pockets. And so they just ignore the complete looting of our tax money that's being done by the same people telling them that poor people are to blame. This is what's going on. The result of decades of conservative media brainwashing, racism, income inequality, driven by, of course, the economic policies, mainly Republicans, but also for Democrats as well, for not coming through and reversing those and trying to, redistribute income in a more equitable way. And yet Homegirl, again, she's part of that, brainwashed, and flies to DC on a private jet. Get the fuck out of here. So, but look, just because you have money issues, or may have had money issues, that again, that doesn't mean that you're, okay. So there's a big sense of entitlement here, as I keep mentioning, okay? She didn't want to pay her taxes, likely because she was told it was going to lazy brown people. That's racism. So she didn't pay it, she got in trouble, and then ended up having to pay it, got pissed off, and then, of course, watched a lot of, Fox News, and then ended up invading the Capitol based on a lie from an alleged billionaire grifter. There's a lot of irony in these situations. A lot of irony, okay? And really, it does illustrate, once again, the power of racism, right-wing media, and right-wing entitlement mentality. I'm hoping a little stint in jail might fix her of that, but then again, I don't know. Might take a lot more for her to realize the truth. I just say that in net worth, Mithril, so that people understand. Okay. Do we need $4 trillion for the military? Didn't Bernie's empire plan cost like $3 trillion? Actually, over the next 10 years, we're going to spend like $7 trillion on the military. Whereas, yeah, Bernie's plan, you can pay for Medicare for all and the cost of free college with the money that we give to the military. Easily. And still have tons of money left for the military. Insane. And yet, this is what we continue to do as a country. Okay. Irony, the guy who said his debt relief company was doing great under Trump. That is irony. True. All right. So we got a Brett Favre story. No, it doesn't have anything to do with sports ball. But lots of fraud. Much fraud, the greatest fraud. Former NFL quarterback and MAGA supporter Brett Favre was recently forced to repay the state of Mississippi $600,000 that he allegedly received illegally from wildfire funds. And that's only a part of it, by the way. And so, first, let me just say, nothing like having a millionaire football star getting money meant for poor people. You know, you got to be pretty poor to qualify for temporary aid for needy families. But yeah, Brett Favre getting a lot of that money. All right, so this happened, as I said, in Mississippi. And how? What is the question here? Okay. Well, the Mississippi Office of the State Auditor determined that Favre and one of his employees owed the state a total of $828,000 that were illegally dispersed to them from the state's welfare budget through at least one nonprofit he worked with, according to Auditor Shad White. After paying $600,000 this week, Favre must pay the remaining $228,000 in interest within 30 days to avoid a legal issue, Auditor Office spokesperson Logan Reeves told CNN. So now the question is why? Why does he owe that money? Well, apparently he is one who allegedly did not fulfill the terms of their contract when he had worked with a nonprofit. Now, this nonprofit happened to have been in the middle of a gigantic, sprawling scandal involving the Mississippi head of the DHS. So now, let's see. Now, White said Favre had accepted the money for speaking engagements that he never attended for a group called Families First for Mississippi, one of the nonprofits involved in the alleged scheme. Last year, Favre agreed to repay a total of $1.1 million and made an initial payment of $500,000. So, of course, the $600,000, he went to pay the rest of the $1.1 million. But then, of course, there was interest on that. And so that's what he owes left. And so now he said, look, I didn't know the funds were illegal when I got them. Okay. He said, I never received money for obligations I didn't meet. And this was back in May of 2020. To reiterate Auditor White's statement, I was unaware that the money being dispersed was paid for out of funds not intended for that purpose. And because of that, I am refunding the full amount back to Mississippi. As he should. The misappropriated funding was revealed when the Mississippi Office of the State Auditor examined how the State Department of Human Services used their funding. White said in the news release dated October 12th, after 2 years of work, we found tens of millions of dollars in misspending. Those findings have now been confirmed this month by an independent forensic audit commissioned by DHS. The details, of course, are as follows. Two nonprofits, the Mississippi Community Education Center and the Family Resource Center, either misspent or improperly dispersed portions of that $77 million, meaning the money was ultimately misspent by a vendor to a nonprofit. So now I have some obvious questions here. How did the money meant for poor people end up going to nonprofit organizations and then ultimately to Brett Favre? How did that even happen? Turns out, massive corruption scandal. So now John Davis, the former director of the Mississippi Department of Human Services, former DHS employee Latimer Smith, Dr. Nancy New, owner and director of the Mississippi Community Education Center, and New Learning Incorporated, Zach New, Nancy's son, assistant director of the MCEC, Ann McGrew, accountant for MCEC, Brett DeBias, were all arrested in connection with a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme. The indictments include a range of violations involving wire fraud and embellishment. embezzlement. Auditors concluded that after an 8-month investigation that the accused conspired to illegally obtain millions in public funds from TANF and used a variety of business entities and schemes to defraud taxpayers. And I would assume that's kind of how the money actually ended up in Favre's bank account. So the details get even more interesting. So now Davis and Smith, for example, are accused of manufacturing documents to enrich Tobias using TANF money. Davis and Smith created invoices to pay him for teaching classes about drug abuse. Now, that's ironic because at the same time he was allegedly teaching these classes, he was also in rehab for drugs. He was addicted to opioids. Oops. Nancy New and her son, Zach New, also were accused of using the news nonprofit MCEC to pay for that drug treatment using welfare funds at Davis's direction. The news also stand accused of transferring millions of dollars in funds to their private businesses. They then converted the funds to their personal use and concealed the conversion through various transfers, fraudulent documents, and at least one forged signature, as well as deceptive accounting measures. Holy shit balls. And finally, Davis and the news are accused of creating a fraud scheme to take TANF funds to pay for personal investments in their medical device companies, Prevacus Inc. and Presol MD LLC, located in Florida. Jesus. By the way, it gets even better. Now, new charges. Back in March, Nancy and Zachary New were also hit with 17 additional counts, including wire fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. I mean, the total jail time that might end up facing is in the hundreds of years. According to the indictment, Nancy New and Zachary New submitted fraudulent reimbursement claims for the salaries of teachers at their for-profit schools. As a result, New Learning Resources Incorporated, for-profit company owned by Nancy New and Zachary New, fraudulently obtained in excess of $2 million to which it was not entitled. And the two personally benefited from that fraud. The funds were also used for example, football tickets, religious concerts. Oh, the irony. Oh, let me just stop for a second. So religious, right? These people claim to be Christian. And what's one of the big tenets of supposedly in Christianity? The poor, right? Help the poor, help the needy. Literally taking money straight from the needy and giving it to themselves, and then going to church and religious concerts. And even using the money to go to the concerts. They also used it on lobbyists, as well as fitness programs for state lawmakers. Holy shit balls. Wow. Now, again, you might be wondering, what happened? How did Brett Favre get involved? So now look, let's be very clear, okay? There's no evidence he was actually in on the scheme. He just received the money. So my question is, of course, if you're getting all that money for speeches that you didn't actually do, how did you not notice that in your bank account? Look, I know Favre's got millions of dollars, right? He's super, super rich person. Okay, even if you have money, you didn't check your bank account and notice oh, look at that. I have 1.1 million extra dollars. Huh. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it's from the place that I said I was going to do speeches for that I didn't actually do yet. Huh. Again, the money is there and you took it. Are you sure? You had no idea where it came from? Look, I understand that you probably had no idea that it was actually welfare fraud money. There's no evidence to show that he actually had any knowledge of that, but he did know whether or not he had done the speeches, and he didn't. And that's important context, because I'm going to go through and I'm going to talk about, of course, his response to this. So now, here's what he said on Twitter. And by the way, this is Favre and Shad White now having a beef on Twitter over this entire thing. He said, as I have said before, I would never accept money for no-show appearances. But he did, and then was ordered to give it back. But he said, of course the money was returned because I would never knowingly take funds meant to help our neighbors in need. But for Shad White to continue to push out this lie that the money was for no-show events is something I cannot stay silent about. Despite all efforts to seek clarification with the auditor, he has never granted me a callback or a meeting with me, but has instead only repeatedly run to the media. Prioritizing sensational headlines over seeking truth is doing a disservice to the people of our great state. Deserve answers and a resolution. So now White responded by this. He said, these are lies. I'm not going to hide how much you were paid, why you were paid, or conduct backroom meetings to make this go away. The contract that justified the payment of $1.1 million in welfare money to you said that you were to speak at 3 total speaking engagements, provide 1 radio spot during the contract period, and provide 1 keynote speaking engagement. The CPA for Favre Enterprises confirmed that this was your contract. You did not give the speeches. You have acknowledged this in statements to my own agents. To suggest my office has not met with you is a lie as well. You have met with agents who work for me. They showed you the contract. They showed you the emails confirming the contract quoted above is how you were paid. To suggest I have only communicated to you this to you via the media is wrong. I'm doing my job. That's it. You can continue to use your megaphone as a celebrity to drown out the facts, but it will not change the facts. God damn. Oh, I love this guy. Look, he's probably, very likely he's probably a Republican. Again, it's Mississippi. I don't care. I love this. I love this. Because this guy's going, hey, wait a minute. Don't bullshit me. Don't lie to me. Here are the facts. You still owe us money that was taken from poor people. Pay the money. Give us back the money. With interest, by the way. And so, look, that is some epic shade. And by the way, the other reason that I like this guy, Shad White, is because he busted a shitload of fraudsters stealing from the people of Mississippi who are in massive need of welfare money. From this, down to this corrupt DHS administrator in the state. So I'm guessing on this issue, he's not going to bullshit around about this because he's already busted a whole bunch of people involved in this fraud network. And as for Favre, he was paid for something that he didn't do. Regardless of whether or not he knew the original source of the money was stolen, doesn't matter. You still end up having to pay it back. And again, he did take the money. He broke the contract. Therefore, sorry, you gotta give it back. Plus interest. I know it sucks. Think about it this way. If it weren't Brett Favre, if it were you that got a bunch of money for something that you didn't do, for a job that you didn't do, that you had agreed to on contract, and it turns out that money was stolen, you think that they would allow you to just to pay it back and continue? Or, would you end up in prison? I mean, how do you think you'd get treated in this situation? I'm just asking questions. But for him, for Favre, I think he's going to turn out okay. So I wouldn't worry too much about him and his personal finances or even his reputation. The guy's a multimillionaire. He's going to be fine. What I worry about is the people of Mississippi whose tax money, when it's not only wasted on these people in this gigantic fraud scheme, but also the poor people whose money was taken that should have gone to them to help them and their families. So, all right. How many guesses do I get? I mean, you should only need one, to be fair. Brett Favre. Nice. Nice. I'm Canadian and my parents would prefer Donald Trump to run our country. We don't talk much. Oh, sad. Don't blame me, though. All right. Got a couple more stories here. Do it. On Thursday, fossil fuel executives testified at a hearing focused on the decades of coordinated industry disinformation about climate change and refused to stop lobbying against efforts to fight climate change. So obviously, it didn't go well. So now Representative Carolyn Maloney, actually, and she's the chair of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, had asked if the CEOs from some of these oil companies would affirm that their organizations would no longer spend any money, either directly or indirectly, to oppose efforts to reduce emissions and address climate change. Well, and so I'll get to their answer, but the event included testimony from 4 industry executives: ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods, BP America CEO David Lawler, Chevron CEO Michael Wirth, Shell Oil President Gretchen Watkins, and leaders from industry trade groups, the American Petroleum Institute, President Mike Summers, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Suzanne Clark. So now, I think you can probably guess what their answer was, okay? Their answer was a gigantic no, a hell no. Why? Well, because why would they? Why would they agree? Pollution is literally their business model. That's how they get money, by polluting the planet. And so, of course, they're going to defend it. It's kind of a dumb question when you think about it, but obviously it's just a question that's meant to get them on the record, okay? But again, these companies, these executives, they're going to defend this. Their jobs are literally on the line. So, of course, they're going to not only defend their business practices, but also lie and be incredibly dishonest to make sure that they continue to make money. Remember, these CEOs have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize shareholder value and shareholder profit. If they do not, they will be fired and replaced with someone who will. So now, according to Jeffrey Suprin and Naomi Oreskes, a pair of climate misinformation scholars at Harvard, companies are using something called a fossil fuel savior frame. So this is how they're framing their arguments, okay? So this framework downplays the reality and seriousness of climate change. It normalizes fossil fuel lock-in and individualizes responsibility, i.e., stop using plastic straws. Oh, it's like the normal, like you get into an argument with a climate denier, for example, on Facebook or Twitter, and they're like, oh, but you drive a car. Oh, I thought you were going to do something about climate change. Walk to work. I'm so smart. Again, it's that meme, right? We should improve society somewhat. Oh, but you partake in society. I'm very intelligent, yes. No, that's not a gotcha. But understand that is a part of the industry talking points, saying that, no, it's not our fault as a giant corporation. No, it's your fault. You bought that plastic wrap. You know, you drove your car down the street. That's your fault. No. In reality, if these giant corporations actually took climate change seriously and changed their business models and changed what energy they actually put out and how they get that energy from, for example, like solar, wind, etc., and supply that energy, and also use more, renewable materials, then consumer choices, well, obviously consumers would choose those things because that's what would be available and it would be more sustainable. But no, we have to individualize it. We have to make it so that you're the problem if you ever mention anything against our beloved CEOs and our beloved fossil fuel companies. You are being a hypocrite because you drove a car once. Aha. So that's what they use. So now Oreskes and Fossil Fuel Free Media Director Jamie Henn observed the presence of that framing during this hearing. Henn said that, quote, it's striking how much all these big oil execs come across as hostage takers, saying, quote, you need us, you can't live without us, you'll never escape. And so, look, the fossil fuel witnesses' initial remarks and responses to lawmakers' questions were also full of industry talking points. For example, they argue in favor of market-based solutions, like carbon taxes. Now, we know, of course, that carbon taxes don't do a goddamn diddly squat. They're not going to do anything. And it's actually something that the industry itself has come up with to say, oh, yeah, carbon tax. We'll just put that out there. They'll buy that, even though it's not really going to have a big of an effect. Now, they also highlighted things like carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology, and hydrogen, both of which, of course, are false solutions. They also suggested a long-term need for oil and gas. The executives claimed to believe in anthropogenic climate change and said that fossil fuel emissions only contribute to global heating. Oh, right. Gotcha. Contribute. Didn't contribute, that's all. Just a little bit. Just a tiny little bit of contribution. Well, think about it this way. Think about a fire truck in a small street, right? Like, very, very small street. If you turn on that fire truck and you start spraying that hose into the stream, what do you think is going to happen? I'm thinking that all that water from the fire truck might do a little bit more than just contribute to the amount of water in the stream. And that's what's going on here. So using the word contribute rather than cause, this is according to HuffPost environmental reporter Chris D'Angelo, downplays and dismisses the science, which shows they're the primary driver. Frankly, it's climate denial, the very topic of this hearing. So now, not only that, but understand that the industry has purchased Republicans. The entire party is purchased by the oil industry. So all the Republicans on the panel immediately leapt to the defense, like the Simpsons skit with Apu jumping in front of the bullet. Like, no, my beloved fossil fuel CEOs, help! I will take this for you. In fact, they repeatedly apologized to the CEOs for the Democrats asking questions. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Mr. CEO. I'm so sorry that they were mean to you. You know I love you. Yeah, we know. We know. Now, the panel's GOP members also tried to redirect attention to other countries like China. Well, that's a consistent narrative they use. Yeah, but the Chinese are doing it. The Chinese are doing it, then we should do it too. No. And also complained about Biden's move to block the Keystone XL pipeline, and even invited a welder who lost his job when the project was canceled to testify. Of course. So now Emily Atkin of the Heated Newsletter noted that the GOP strategy at this hearing was clear. It will not attempt to claim big oil didn't mislead on climate. Instead, the GOP is claiming Democrats are wasting time by focusing on climate change and that it isn't important to everyday Americans. Oh, you look at that. Here's the thing, though. It is actually important. It does cause billions of dollars in damage and, of course, lost lives due to things like flooding, stronger storms, rising temperatures, rising sea level. Not only that, but, of course, they're absolutely wrong when they claim that regular people don't actually care about the climate. It may not be at the top of people's list of issues to tackle right now, but because it is so big in scope, people do care about it and want long-term solutions. In fact, according to the survey results released earlier this week, majority of Americans see climate as a problem of high importance to them and support Congress passing legislation to increase reliance on clean energy sources. But none of that's going to matter to these corporations, by the way. As I mentioned before, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to maximize profit. That's the entire point of a corporation, which is why they have to be regulated. Now, unfortunately, we have a Congress that is completely bought out, essentially, by fossil fuels, the entire Republican Party, and many corporate Democrats. And I can name a couple of them. Joe Manchin, the most obvious example of somebody who works for the fossil fuel industry because he has investments in coal. He is a literal coal baron. And then, of course, you have people like Henry Cuellar, who's one of the most top paid Democrats by the oil and gas industry. And many others, by the way, who also receive a lot of money that are not going to do anything about climate change. And so understand we can't exactly rely on Congress passing legislation at this point. I think there has to be much, much more outside pressure, a national climate march, national climate movement that exists outside of electoral politics. Because we know Congress isn't going to do anything, so it looks like we're going to have to take matters into our own hands, because unless we do something, these companies will lead us to climate destruction, all in order to, do everything they can, get short-term profits. Ben Shapiro said that humanity will adapt and only a few thousand people will die. Ben Shapiro is a moron. He is the smartest sounding dumb person I have ever seen. He really is. Like his whole thing is, I'm really, really smart because I talk fast. No, that doesn't make you smart. It just makes you somebody who's really dumb talking very fast. All right. One more thing. Too bad it gets such a large platform. It's all astroturfed. Like the one thing we got to realize too, real quick, is that all the conservative media out there is so massively funded. They are literally drowning in money over on the right wing. And so money buys you clicks, money buys you engagement, money buys you followers, money buys you exposure, massive media presence. And so all of this money has literally astroturfed these right wingers, not because they have and they're popular, not because they have a good message, but because they're everywhere. You can't, you can't swing a stick online and not run into a Ben Shapiro video, right, on YouTube. You just can't. They're everywhere. Turning Point USA, Daily Wire, and these social media companies who are giant corporations also benefit from this. So they're really all in on it. It's not a conspiracy. It just comes down to money. And the right wing overwhelmingly says, oh, big corporations, we're on your side because we want to get you less taxes. And they say, whoa, wow, well, let's elevate this guy because he's going to make sure that we can return maximum value to our shareholders. So now let's get to Katie Porter. Finally have a little bit of fun in this show. During a congressional hearing on Thursday with the executives at major oil giants, Representative Katie Porter decided that she was going to do what she does best.
Public land are already leased by fossil fuel companies and not even used yet, just available for drilling whenever you decide.
Congresswoman, again, I think you have a fundamental misunderstanding as to how this process works and the time and resources.
Reclaiming my time. The answer is 13.9 million acres. To visualize how much land that is, if each grain of rice were 1 acre, that would be 479 pounds of rice. The American Petroleum Institute even opposed pausing more leasing on our lands. They even sued to stop it because apparently this acreage wasn't enough. Mr. Wirth, you serve on the American Petroleum Institute's executive committee. Do you support a pause on new oil and gas leases on federal land?
Congresswoman, access to resource in this country is essential to ensure the energy security of our country and
reclaiming my time. Mr. Lawler, do you support a pause?
The administration, and it's our hope that the pause end soon. We think it's important to go
Reclaiming
forward.
my time. Thank you for your answer. The answer there is no. Mr. Woods, do you support a pause on new federal and gas leases?
No.
Ms. Watkins, do you support a pause on new federal and gas leases?
No, I do not, because I think it's important.
You already have 13.9 million acres. This is equivalent to Maryland and New Jersey combined. How much more do you need? How much more acreage? You have 2 of our 50 states at a price that makes the Louisiana Purchase look like a ripoff, and you're not even using it. What more do you need? Iowa, Colorado, Virginia? Our public land belongs to the American people, not to big oil. When you lobby and you sue so that you could take more of our public land, you're saying too much is never enough. The American people are tired of this charade.
Damn, I love it. So a couple of really fun things from that. First of all, you're gonna try to gaslight her. You'd be like, "Oh, you don't actually understand how this process works." Bullshit, reclaiming my time. Oh no, I'm gonna reclaim that time. Oh, I love it. So again, I love the fact, like, I love how she does this, for one. So she's direct with her questions. Yes or no, yes or no. And you know how these executives are. They're like, they go around, they kind of tiptoe, they try to dance around the answers. You've seen it a million times, right? In different hearings. And they give this BS, like, corporate speak explanation, or at least they try to. And Katie Porter's like, no, I ain't got time for this shit. Reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time. Meaning, you're going to shut the fuck up while I talk. I absolutely love that. And again, she made a lot of excellent points. And so here's the good thing. Here's the interesting thing about this, okay? So this video, understand, this was not made for oil executives. And this is what's great. Because oil executives, by the way, the oil executives don't give a shit. They're going to go back and be like, oh no, what are you talking about? I did fantastic on that. She had no idea what she's talking about. Absolutely, she does have ideas what she's talking about. She's smarter than anybody else in that room. And also, she has the truth on her side. But no, what this is for, who this is for, it's for the average person. The average person, if they watch this video, they're going to think, wait, they have all this land and they're not using it? Federal land? What the fuck? What's going, why are these oil companies buying up all this public land that they don't use? And why, by the way, if they hold all this land for oil and gas exploration, why are gas prices so high? You see, it gets people thinking, right? It gets people thinking. And of course, the answers to both of those questions are, they really come down to greed, corporate greed. Understand that these corporations want our land, our resources. They want it to be dug up, drilled, destroyed, and then sold. By the way, the resources being sold on the market, on the global market for profit. You know, I remember when they would talk about, oh no, we need to drill more oil because we need energy independence. Energy independence is a sham. It's not a real thing. All energy is publicly traded. And so, at least, you know, when it comes to fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas, it's all sold on the open market. And so, you know, the whole entire idea of, no, we have to do more because we have to have energy independence so we don't buy our oil from other places. No, all they want to do is they want to sell more oil on the world market. It doesn't actually do anything to, you know, decrease gas prices. It's just about them trying to sell more oil than another foreign company, for example. Even though all these companies are pretty much multinational at this point, all they want to do is just increase their profit margin, which they have a fiduciary responsibility to do so, by the way, to maximize shareholder value, and so they can bring home capital gains, they can do some dividends, and they can just make the money. As the Big Lebowski, follow the money. Just follow the money. And so, again, these companies, and by the way, this fossil fuel is being used as the main driver of climate change. These companies want to do more of it until the last bit of profit is literally sucked out of the ground. And so videos like these are so incredibly strong because Katie Porter, again, when she's grilling these executives, she's a boss. There's incredible strength there, incredible clarity. And these executives look like idiots. Sniveling Ferengi is what they look like. Profit. That's what they look like. So she absolutely owns them, and it's so good to get those videos out, you know? And so I love that she's doing this, and hopefully starting conversations, good conversations about energy policy. And what's really important too is the effect that this could have on regular people, getting them fired up about working to change things. Because what we have to understand is that Congress itself, even with members like Katie Porter, she is one of just a few Congress people who actually do give a shit about holding people accountable and about climate change. But the rest, a great many, a majority of Congress, is bought by these same corporations that have allowed them to get away with polluting the land and lying about it for decades, even when their own internal research said that their actions are the main drivers of climate change. And so what we need to do is no longer rely on Congress and take the matter into our own hands. Do marches, you know, just try to even get elected ourselves to try to get into the system, but also push them from the outside. Climate strikes. That's a one thing. Because again, labor power, our power of labor is pretty much the only and best tool that we have in order to make a difference when it comes to government. If you shut down that system using the power of labor strikes, that system will change. So just something to think about so we can actually help out the few people in Congress that actually do have our back. Absolutely. Once again, huge props to Katie Porter. I always love seeing her videos. By the way, her license plate, badass. Oversight. I love it. So I wish we could see more Katie Porters yelling at CEOs, but more importantly, crafting policies to hold these companies accountable. All right. You know what? That's a good thing to leave off on today. Thank you for going around the nation today. Appreciate it. Let me read a couple of super chats here. Dango Bangle asks, when do we get to eat the rich? I'm sure they would be stringy and probably not delicious. Renato Herrera says you should run for public office. You'd be so much better than almost everyone there. I think I would get too frustrated at the fact that right now electoral politics is kind of a dead end. And I don't mean don't get involved in electoral politics, because I think that is important. But like at this point, voting in elections is harm reduction, and we should absolutely do it. But at the same time, that's not the only thing that we need to be doing. I think it's way more important to build labor power. You do labor power, you build unions, you get together, and you support unions, or even if you can't do any of those things. And I totally understand, because these companies have a ton of power. Just doing, not supporting companies who are not unionized or are fighting against union labor. That's just some of the simple stuff that you and I can do as regular people and get more people involved to do the same thing. Build labor power, and we can fight the system. Labor power and take over local elections. Yes, Danko Bango, that's an excellent point as well. The local elections are being taken over by conservatives. What we need to do is also do the reverse and start taking over local places rather than focusing on national elections. The states have a lot of power, and so in our system of government, and so running for those local offices, not even state offices, just even in your township, your county, and yes, in your state, that's going to make a great difference. We need more action. Protests used to be big in the 50s. Absolutely, I agree. Dr. Zippy McScoot said, all this makes me tired of the human race. I'm out, y'all. Gonna smoke weed and listen to Firebird. Hey, you know what? You got to do what you got to do to cope and recharge. We all need it. We can't be on 100% of the time, especially considering everything that we have to fight against. But, you know, the important thing is when you're recharged, you come back to the fight. We need you. We need us. We need us all to work together. Okay. Thank you all for listening to me rant. Cover the Nevada State DNC. Public utility, let me look into it, okay? I haven't seen anything about the Nevada State DNC as of late, but I will look. I'll promise to look into it and see what I can find out about them, okay? Great. I thought Michigan was safe blue. Oh, God, it's not. No. Oh, no. Oh, no. You know what? Let me just say, nowhere is ever safe. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you, love you, and remember, change begins with you. Be back here on Monday.
Amazing. Mike Pounds.
Big, massive dump.
Tighten up my knee. I like my knee tight.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.